Hello and welcome to RB&D Reviews. I am Rob.
I'm Brendan.
And not too long ago, we announced that we were celebrating our uploading our 500th video, and that we were going to be taking DVD recommendations. And so this will be the first video to kick this off. And Brendan, it's great to have you back on the channel again.
Of course, it's great to be back talking about movies.
Yeah, and what's interesting is we're pretty much in your room where we shot our early videos. Yeah, like the couch used to be right here.
Yep.
So we're back almost. So what a good way to kick off our celebration. We thank you very much for all of you that sent us DVD requests. Like Dave and I said in our video, we're going to try and do at least one review a week, and we're going to do it until the end of August. So if you hadn't submitted something, go right ahead. Today our request today is a movie that was recommended to us by Ben Way. One of the movies that he gave us an option for was Lost Highway, which is the David Lynch movie. It's kind of hard to put into words, but basically it's almost like two stories. One involves a character played by Bill Pullman who's being watched. He's getting these videos of somebody recording him, and he thinks his wife might be having an affair. And there's a second story involving a mechanic named Pete who takes up a sort of relationship with this major client. I think what's his name, Mr. Eddie.
Mr. Eddie.
Yeah. So Brendan, how would you describe this movie? I mean, it's really, other than that, it's really hard to describe this movie, especially if it's a David Lynch movie.
It's like the weirdest dream you've ever had. It was really like David Lynch's dream you're watching. Mm-hmm. And I think much like a dream, the movie on a subconscious level makes sense as you're watching it. But when you look back on it, you're right, and you can't really put it into words. It's an experience, mm-hmm. just like a dream is. Like when you put a dream into words, someone else, it loses all effect. Mm-hmm. And with this movie, I think most of the strength of it comes from the sound design.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like Lynch's movies always a really strong sound, and it's particularly in the first 45 minutes, hour, when they focus on the married couple's storyline with getting strange videotapes of themselves sleeping at night. The sound in it is just very creepy. It almost seems like it's setting up a horror movie. Really, it plays like a horror movie, a horror mystery in those first 45 minutes, and then it turns into a completely different movie. And I don't think this is a film that there are answers to what it means by the end of it. I think like anything David Lynch, if you enjoy his stuff, you're probably going to enjoy Lost Highway. If you don't like his stuff like Blue Velvet or Mulholland Drive, you're not going to like this.
Yeah. Now that was a good point, because I liked it. I didn't love it. I liked Blue Velvet and Mulholland Drive much more. And like you said, it might be because there's how it was, you know, like the stories and stuff. Like Blue Velvet, it's a straightforward story. There's this kid that finds an ear, and he wants to know what happened, and it just leads into, it's almost like a film noir detective thing, kind of like this one, and to an extent like Mulholland Drive, where a character somehow gets involved in something and wants to know what happened, and he or she goes through something. So in a way, it is kind of a detective thing, and there's some very nice film noir touches from this movie as well. Like for example, Patricia Arquette in her first scene, she's dressed almost like one of those 1940s femme fatales, like you'd see in, like, you know, Maltese Falcon or something like that, you know, late 40s, early 50s film noir type of movie.
Yeah, it just seems like a hodgepodge of things Lynch really loves. Mm-hmm. You know, particularly the character of Pete. You know, he kind of keeps recurring these characters wearing leather jackets looking like James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause. Mm-hmm. As a repeating motif in most of his films. But again, this is like, if you were going to recommend a David Lynch movie, you're right. You're going to start at Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive. Lost Highway is not a good place to start, but that's really because of how strange it is, and almost, it seems like a 2.5-hour film experiment. Yeah. Particularly with sound and visuals, because his sound design, again, is just very amazing.
Well, and very wonderful photography. I mean, with this movie, when you say it's an experience, you know, even though sometimes I was questioning and, you know, using my head a little bit, I couldn't take my eyes off the screen, because my reaction to this movie was, I really liked the first story with Bill Pullman's character, even though I found the dialogue to be a little lumbering. It was an interesting story, but when we got to the second story, the dialogue was much better, and there were times when the movie kind of went into Goodfellas territory, but I felt like it just wasn't as good as the first story. So it was like there's stuff from the first story that I liked but didn't like, and the second one did things better, but it was the opposite.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating, because you're right, the first story doesn't feel like it pays off. And strangely, neither does the second one. But then again, Lynch's films aren't really about big payoffs. He's not a conventional filmmaker. He's very experimental. He really wants his audience to almost like be part of his fucked up dream, which is really what the film feels like. I mean, it's ugly at some parts, it's pretty disgusting, and it can be
chilling,
bizarre, particularly with the there's a character in the movie who shows up and hands a character a phone and says, "I'm in your house, call me," and he picks up, he calls his house, and the guy who's right in front of him is on the phone with him in his house. It is one of the most bizarre scenes in the film, and like legitimately feels like it's setting up a horror film. But Lynch, oh, you're right, always moves expectations, then goes into this sort of almost like 50s noir story.
And we had an interesting discussion about what this character means. I think what I took away from it is whoever's watching this will probably get something different of it. Like the character that you're talking about that's played by Robert Blake, the impression I got is because he's part of both stories. I think you said that, you know, he's kind of like fate or something that you know, makes these characters do some of the most evil things. I kind of took it away that this is like a representation of David Lynch, you know, kind of having a hand in the stories and making it move the way he wants. I mean, I don't know if how I interpret it's correct, but I think that it was a nice thing to talk away from. Well,
yeah, in a weird way, the character's almost like a middle finger to conventional movie storytelling, and that's Lynch is always breaking that down. And this, strangely enough, Lost Highway is not his strangest film. Inland Empire is just bizarre. So is Eraserhead and Wild at Heart. I mean, he's got a lot of strange movies, but I think if you're someone who gets into him by watching stuff like Blue Velvet and Mulholland Drive, this is a good film to check out as well. It's much darker than those.
Yes, it is. It is.
But I would say strongly recommend it to anyone who likes Lynch films or surrealism.
I agree too. Like I said, I liked it. I didn't love it. I think, like I said, Mulholland Drive and Blue Velvet are much better films, in my opinion, from David Lynch. But I agree. If you're going to start with a David Lynch movie, don't start with this one. I would say if you're used to movies here's another thing. This movie has a slow pace, and if you aren't used to, you know, if you're not used to this, like there's a lot of fast-paced movies that are coming out in theaters now. If you're not used to that, or you're not used to using your head and trying to figure things out, if this movie may not be a good place to start either. I think that, like I said, when I watch this, I mean, I'm used to these types of movies, but I know there's a lot of movies coming out in theaters and DVD now that are these fast-paced movies where, you know, they spoon-feed you and they let you know what's going on. Here you have to kind of think as you go along. You know, you have to you're giving these clues and you have to kind of put them together, or at least try to, and it may not be how you imagine it at the end.
It's so bizarre, and it's so difficult to talk about as well without giving certain elements of the story away. But then again, at the end of the day, the story almost doesn't even matter, because it comes down to that it's sort of a sensory experience with visuals and the impeccable audio design, and the sound design is like heavy metal music at one point in the movie. It's really jarring how he messes with the audience, and I think it's just one movie where it's just messing with your expectations of what should happen in a movie.
That's a review of Lost Highway. So Ben, thank you very much for this recommendation, and we'll be back next week, either me and Dave or me and Brendan, with another recommendation. If you want to leave your opinion about Lost Highway or David Lynch, go ahead and leave your comments in the comment box, and thank you very much for watching. If you want to check out some of our other videos, like I said at the beginning, we have over 500 now. You can check out stuff that we did in movie theaters or on DVD, and if you're interested, consider being a subscriber. And thank you very much for watching.